The thunder rumbled ominously in the distance, sending a shiver down Sarah's spine as she peered out the window. Dark clouds loomed overhead, swirling like ominous shadows that threatened to swallow her whole. In that moment, all of her worries and fears came rushing back to her. The lonely nights spent in silence, the creeping anxiety that wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. But just as despair threatened to take hold, a familiar, gentle presence beside her grounded her. It was Jake. With his soft brown fur glistening in the dim light, Jake looked up at her with eyes so full of understanding that they seemed to read her soul. She could almost hear his unspoken promise. "I'm here for you." It was a promise that had been reiterated countless times over their years together. But today, in the midst of a brewing storm, it felt more vital than ever. As the wind howled and the first drops of rain began to tap against the window, Sarah felt the weight of her solitude press down. Despite the storm outside, her heart felt heavy with echoes of past battles that still lingered in the shadows of her mind. She closed her eyes, leaning down to rest her head against Jake's warm side, gasping at the comfort his presence provided. Just days ago, she had sat alone in the same spot, buried in unsettling thoughts. The world felt alien, every sound exaggerated and unsettling, and yet Jake had always been her anchor. "What would I do without you, buddy?" she whispered, scratching behind his ears, and she was met with a light thump of his tail against the hardwood floor, a small but powerful affirmation of their bond. The patter of rain intensified, each droplet drumming on the roof like a wild symphony. With every crack of thunder that followed, Sarah's heart raced, each beat echoing in her ears. Memories of their first days together flooded her mind, a montage of joy and uncertainty. The day she rescued Jake from the shelter replayed vividly, as if it were yesterday. He had been a timid pup, lost in a world of barking chaos. The sight of him, shaking in the corner of his kennel, struck an emotional chord deep within her. She had known in that moment that he was meant to be hers. It was a profound realization, an instant connection, deeper than any bond she had ever experienced. As she held him for the first time, feeling his tiny heart beat against hers, she promised she would always protect him, be his home, and most importantly, love him unconditionally. But would he be able to protect her in return? The thought gnawed at her like a restless specter. The thunder rumbled again, and a blinding flash of lightning illuminated the room, momentarily crystallizing her turmoil. It felt as if the storm had become a reflection of her inner struggle. "Jake," she murmured, wrapping him in her arms as she sought refuge in his comfort. It was a ritual they had perfected. She enveloped him in her warmth, and he answered with his loyalty. Tonight, however, there was an underlying tension that Sarah couldn't quite shake. Was it mere anxiety or something more profound? The storm outside mirrored her swirling emotions. She had spent far too long avoiding the realities of life, but here she was, grappling with a storm not just of rain, but of feelings and doubts that had accumulated over time. With a deep breath, she stood up, taking Jake's lead. "Let's gather our courage, huh?" she joked softly, trying to lift the weight of the moment. Jake looked up at her, his eyes glimmering with undiluted trust. He was the one constant in a world filled with uncertainties. They would face whatever lay ahead together, just as they always had. Grabbing Jake's leash, she headed for the back door, feeling his excitement bubbling over as they ventured into the wet world outside. With every step onto the rain-soaked ground, a spark of adrenaline surged through her veins. They stepped into the storm's chaotic dance, each raindrop a reminder that life was unpredictable, but together, they could embrace the chaos. The heavy rain poured down, soaking through her clothes almost instantly, yet she felt alive. Jake darted ahead, chasing raindrops and puddles with boundless energy, reminding her of the unfiltered joy that lived in the simplest moments. As she watched him frolic, her laughter rang out, a pure melody that cut through the storm like a beacon of hope. Then, just as quickly as the laughter rose, it faded into a whisper. Sarah's heart paused for a moment. She felt it then, something deeper, something breathing. Just beneath the clamor of nature's fury, it intertwined with her very essence. And in that split second, she truly understood the vibrant connection she shared with Jake. "Do you feel that?" she asked, breathless and wide-eyed, though it was clear Jake was still enthralled by the chase of nature's whims. He turned to look back at her, tilted his head, seemingly sharing in her revelation. They continued to play. But a haunting thought laced through her mind. Could she trust that connection to guide her through the storms of life? As rain cascaded down their bodies, Jake suddenly stopped, looking off into the distance, and Sarah instinctively felt it too. It was as if the air crackled with unspoken energy, a silent communication that transcended words. In that moment, Sarah knew. It was just her and Jake against the world. Together, they could face any storm, chase away any dark specter that dared to invade their peace. She took a deep breath, allowing the cool rain to wash away her fears as she embraced the uncertainty. "Let's face it together, Jake," she said, reaching down to tug him affectionately. With a wag of his tail and a joyful bark, he seemed to agree wholeheartedly. They were a team, stronger together, unyielding in the face of darkness. The storm raged on, yet she found comfort in the knowledge that they were bound by more than just fate. They were partners in this dance of life, and somehow, in the chaos that roared beyond, their breaths intertwined, an unwavering promise to comfort and protect one another. Come what may, as the rain fell heavier, they made their way back home, a sanctuary away from the storm, knowing that love, the unconditional, fierce kind they shared, could weather anything. Birdsong whispered a shy embrace, and within that chaos she finally understood. She was not just living. She was breathing life into every moment, alongside her best friend, Jake. A stormy night. The storm continued to rage long into the night, each crack of thunder a reminder of nature's overwhelming power. As Sarah and Jake settled into their cozy home, the howling wind outside became a sinister soundtrack to their quiet sanctuary. Flickering candlelight cast playful shadows on the walls, and for a moment, Sarah felt at ease, cocooned in a world that belonged solely to them. But that sense of comfort was fleeting. The wind howled louder, rattling the windows as if some unseen force were trying to break in. Sarah felt her heart race with each blast of thunder, sending treacherous tendrils of anxiety spiraling through her mind. She tucked her legs beneath her on the couch and took a deep breath, reminding herself that Jake was there to protect her. "Hey, buddy," she said softly, reaching down to scratch him under his chin. His warm body pressed against her side brought an overwhelming sense of calm. It was as if he knew her fears and was determined to ease them. The thunder faded momentarily as she whispered, "I'm okay as long as you're here." Jake's ears perked up, and he tilted his head toward her, his expression a mix of concern and love. It was moments like these that reminded her of how deeply they were connected. She'd never anticipated how much he would change her life, but now, he was her anchor in an ever-changing storm. As they settled deeper into the evening, the storm intensified. Rain lashed against the windows, whipping the world outside into a chaotic frenzy. Sarah found herself drawn to the window, peering out into the shadows, feeling a pull something uncanny in the atmosphere. A flash of lightning illuminated the yard, and for a brief moment, everything became clear. She could have sworn she saw a figure move at the edge of the trees, but before she could grasp it, darkness swallowed the yard again. Her heart raced, and she quickly looked down at Jake. He was alert, standing at her side, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. His gaze fixed on the window, tail stiff, his instincts on high alert. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Was it just her imagination, or was there something or someone out there? The growling intensified, and Sarah felt the weight of dread settle over her. She glanced back toward the window, squinting into the shadows for any movement. "It's probably just a deer or something, right?" She tried to reassure herself, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her anxiety. Without another moment's hesitation, she grabbed her flashlight from the coffee table and moved toward the door. Jake, glued to her side, a protective aura radiating from him, followed closely. They stepped into the entryway, the sound of the storm surrounding them like an ominous symphony. "Stay close, Jake," she managed to say, her heart pounding in her ears. She opened the door slowly, the hinges creaking in protest, and stepped out into the chilling rain. The world outside felt foreign, the darkness pressing in around her like a thick fog. With one firm grip on the flashlight, she swept the beam across the yard, illuminating puddles that danced wildly under the downpour. Nothing seemed out of place, just the relentless rain and the shadows created by the trees. Yet, the unease lingered, nagging at her gut. "Let's check it out," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Jake barked softly, encouraging her as he pressed forward. They moved toward the edge of the yard where the trees stood like sentinels guarding secrets. Each step felt heavy as the damp ground threatened to swallow them whole. Suddenly, a rustle echoed in the bushes. Startled, Sarah jumped, her heart racing. "What was that?" she breathed, barely daring to move. Jake tensed, his body rigid, and he took a cautious step forward. Before she could gain her composure, a flash of movement broke the stillness. Half expecting danger, Sarah raised her flashlight, illuminating a small shape darting out from the underbrush. It wasn't a deer or a wild animal, it was a dog, scruffy, trembling, and soaked to the bone. "Oh my God," Sarah gasped, her heart leaping into her throat. The dog looked lost and terrified, darting back as if it sensed their presence. "It's okay, sweetie," she called out, kneeling down, her own heart aching at the sight. Jake barked, attempting to approach it, but the tiny creature shied away, whimpering softly. The anxiety pulsing through Sarah morphed into urgency. This poor dog needed help, and she couldn't just stand back. "Come here, little guy," she coaxed gently, her heart full of compassion. The terrified dog hesitated, its fur matted and muddy, but something in Sarah's voice seemed to reach it. It took a step closer, still unsure, but desperate for warmth. As she extended her hand, Jake stood beside her, his gentle demeanor calming the terrified pup. "It's okay, buddy. We'll take care of you," Sarah promised, her voice soothing. Slowly, the dog crept forward, inching toward her, and within moments, it was nuzzling against her hand, seeking warmth and comfort. "Oh, you poor thing," she whispered, wrapping her other arm around its shivering body. It was a small, scrappy creature that felt fragile in her embrace. "I won't let anything happen to you." Jake sniffed the newcomer curiously, his tail starting to wag tentatively. As the rain continued to pour, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. They had encountered this frightened creature for a reason, and she couldn't turn away. "Let's get inside, okay?" she said, remembering the chaos swirling around them. They needed to get this pup warm and dry before the storm got any worse. Tucking the trembling dog under her arm, they hurried back toward the house, Jake leading the way. Once inside, she quickly shut the door against the roaring winds and rain. "Okay, buddy, let's get you dry," she said, setting the small dog down on a towel. It shivered violently, its dark eyes reflecting pure fear. Sarah grabbed another towel, rubbing it vigorously over the little creature, offering warmth while attempting to soothe its nerves. Jake watched, eager and curious, his eyes flickering between Sarah and the newcomer. There was something about him that instantly made the frightened pup feel more at ease, which calmed Sarah's own racing heart. Meanwhile, the storm raged on outside, but inside, a warmth enveloped them. As she tended to the small animal, the differences between the three of them melted into a semblance of safety. The chaos outside became a distant memory. "All right, I need to name you," she chuckled, her voice vibrant as she rummaged over the dog's fur, coaxing a sense of relief into its tiny body. "How about Storm?" The little dog looked up at her, its eyes softening with trust. Jake seemed to approve, nudging against his new friend in a gesture of camaraderie. Sarah felt the burden of her fears lessen, replaced by a profound sense of community that stirred within her. This was their momentous chance to embrace life's unpredictability with love instead of fear. As they settled into the rhythm of the evening, Sarah understood that the storm wasn't an enemy to be feared. It was an opportunity for connection. With every breath, they had woven their lives a little closer together, forming an unbreakable bond in the eye of the storm. As the wind howled outside, Jake and Storm lay down at her feet, a warm knot of companionship. Together, in their little sanctuary, they found peace amidst chaos, ready to face whatever the night held. The walk of courage dawn broke shyly, casting soft golden rays through the clouds that still lingered from the storm. Sarah rummaged her eyes and stretched, feeling the familiar warmth of Jake nestled beside her. while the smaller dog, Storm, lay curled up at her feet. She smiled to herself, grateful for the unexpected twist that the storm had brought. As the morning sunshine filtered through the windows, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. After getting the dogs up and out, she decided it was time for an adventure, a chance for bonding, and a small risk to displace the remnants of unease from the previous night. Today, they would go for a walk in the nearby woods, a place she had learned to love but hadn't visited in a while. "All right, guys, let's gear up," she announced, her voice filled with excitement. Jake barked enthusiastically, his tail wagging furiously, while Storm, still a bit timid, looked up at her, a flicker of excitement beginning to show in his eyes. With both dogs leashed and ready, she stepped outside into the crisp morning air, the scent of damp earth and fresh foliage invigorating her spirit. As they set off down the winding trail, Sarah felt the worries of the world melt away. Nature held a magic of its own. Each chirp of a bird, each rustle of leaves, reminded her of the beauty around her. Jake bounded ahead, tail wagging, with the confidence of a leader eager to explore. Storm trotted closely beside her, still adjusting to the freedom that nature offered. The trail beneath her feet felt solid, grounding her as the previous night's chaos faded into a distant memory. Midway through the walk, she noticed the sunlight filtering through the trees, casting intricate shadows on the ground. It was peaceful, serene, a state of mind she had longed for. Yet, in the quiet, an unsettling thought crept back into her mind. Was this newfound happiness too fragile to last? "Come on, guys," she called out brightly, shaking off the nagging feelings. The dogs dashed ahead, lured by the forest's wonders. Around a bend, they discovered a small clearing, where a family of deer grazed peacefully. Jake's instincts kicked in, and he began to bark, excited and unaware of the delicate situation. "Jake!" "No!" Sarah yelled, panic coursing through her. Before she could react, Jake charged into the clearing. The deer scattered, bounding away in fear, disappearing into the undergrowth. Sarah could feel her heart hammering as she sprinted after him, Storm hurrying to keep pace with her. "Jake!" "Come back!" she shouted, desperation threading through her voice. But Jake was reveling in his wild instincts, and it was difficult to rein him in. He darted deeper into the woods, the world behind them fading into a cacophony of rustling leaves and fading light. As they weaved farther from the trail, Sarah felt a growing sense of dread. The sudden whirl of anxiety pulled at her gut. "Jake!" She pressed forward, adrenaline pumping as Storm kept up beside her. They were in unfamiliar territory now, the lush trees towering like giants, blocking the sunlight above. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of chasing, Sarah spotted Jake. He stood at the base of a large oak tree, sniffing at something on the ground. Relieved, she rushed over, but the moment she reached him, the peaceful atmosphere shifted. "Let's go back," she urged. But Jake's attention was focused on whatever lay before him. He began to paw at the ground, growling softly. Sarah's heart sank. There was something off. Something that made the air around her feel charged with tension. "What did you find?" she whispered, stepping closer, her breath hitching as she bent down. Just beneath the leaves, an object glimmered, a small silver locket, half buried in the earth. Kneeling down, she reached for it, a wave of unease washing over her as she brushed away the dirt. Before she could take a closer look, Storm let out a low whine, his instincts kicking in much like Jake's had earlier. He stood stiffly, looking toward the tree line. Sarah's gaze snapped to the shadows beyond, feeling a chill creep up her spine. The soft sounds of the forest had muted, replaced by an eerie silence. "Jake, Storm, let's head back," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. But as she turned to leave, a rustling in the bushes caught her attention. She froze, heart racing, glancing back to where the noise had come from. The underbrush shifted again. Just beyond her line of sight, something was there. She felt a prickle of fear crawl along her skin. "You guys stay close," she instructed, holding Jake's collar firmly and giving Storm a reassuring pat. Staying alert, she could feel the tension rising in the air. The rustling continued, and Sarah's resolve wavered. "Is someone there?" she called out, her voice shaking slightly. There was no answer, only silence, thick and oppressive. Just as she began to back away, A figure stepped out from behind the trees, a tall man, draped in a dark jacket, his eyes concealed beneath the brim of a worn-out hat. Sarah's heart sank as he regarded her with an unreadable expression. "Who are you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jake growled low in his throat, and Storm stood poised, both dogs ready to protect her. "Just a traveler," the man replied, his voice gravelly and weathered. "Trying to find my way." He stepped closer, the shadows around him deepening, making it hard to read his intentions. Sarah felt the instinct to flee surge within her, but the fear of losing control gnawed at her. "You're in the wrong place," she said defiantly, moving to put herself between the man and her dogs. "We were just leaving." "Oh, but you've found something interesting," he said, nodding toward the locket still clutched in her hand. "That's been lost for a while." "What do you mean?" she asked, feeling her pulse quicken. "It belongs to someone who lives nearby, and they'd like it back." His tone left no room for question, yet uncertainty lingered in the air. Something about him felt off, a sixth sense telling her to tread carefully. "My dogs won't let you take anything," she warned, trying to sound tougher than she felt. Jake's growl intensified, while Storm stood protectively beside her, and Sarah felt a surge of courage. These two had proven they would protect her, she just had to figure out how to do the same for them. "Charming dogs you have," he smirked, but there was an edge to his gaze. "Just hand it over and nobody has to get hurt." Sarah squared her shoulders, heart pounding furiously. "I'm not giving it to you. You don't scare me." The man's expression darkened, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw a flicker of something menacing in his eyes. "You might want to reconsider," he said softly, stepping closer as if to intimidate her. Before she could respond, Jake lunged forward, barking with all his might. At that moment, Storm joined in, both dogs acting as one, creating a wall of sound and fury between Sarah and the intruder. "Stop, you fools," the man shouted, taken aback, but Sarah seized the opportunity, gripping Jake's leash tighter while pulling Storm close to her side. "Run," she shouted, her instinct kicking in. She whipped around and took off down the trail, the dogs hot on her heels. She glanced back to see the man hesitating, caught off guard by the ferocity of her pets. The path twisted and turned, and Sarah scaled the uneven ground as fear surged through her. The forest, once a friend, felt like an unfathomable maze as she raced away from the eerie figure. "Come on, guys. We need to get home," she urged, pushing forward despite the pounding of her heart. The dogs dashed beside her, their presence a warm reassurance as they navigated the unknown together. Just when she believed they were in the clear, a low growl erupted from behind and she whipped around to find the man in pursuit. He was faster than she had anticipated, fear coiling tightly around her. She pressed on, adrenaline pumping through her veins as she finally spotted the edge of the woods, the sunlight breaking through the treetops. "We're almost there," she shouted, urging the dogs onward. At last, they burst through the trees and into a clearing leading back to the main road, their sanctuary in sight. With one last look behind her, Sarah felt a thread of panic unraveling. The man had stopped at the tree line, a dark silhouette against the backdrop of nature, but she knew he wouldn't follow them into the open. They were safe at least for now. Breathing heavily, she pushed herself forward, finally reaching the road. Jake and Storm flanked her sides, their eyes glistening with concern. They had faced danger together, and Sarah felt a renewed appreciation for the strength of their bond. "Let's get home," she whispered, feeling the weight of the world lift ever so slightly. But as they turned to head back toward their sanctuary, a nagging feeling lingered in the back of her mind. The locket, the mysterious man, the sense of danger that had stepped into their lives. Whatever had happened today, she knew the closeness they shared had only grown stronger in the face of fear. With each challenge, each moment, they had proven themselves a formidable team. But as they walked home along the road, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, a warning of tests yet to come. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the landscape as Sarah, Jake, and Storm finally made it home. The familiar sight of her cozy house nestled among the trees brought a wave of relief, yet the apprehension of what had occurred lingered in the back of her mind. She ushered the dogs inside, closing the door firmly behind them. "Okay," she said, taking a deep breath. We're safe now." She felt the weight of the world begin to lift, but uncertainty gnawed at her. Why had that man been so interested in the locket? Storm wandered over to his spot by the window, looking out into the fading light with a watchful gaze. Jake plopped down beside Sarah, resting his head on her lap, sensing her unease. She scratched behind his ears, searching for comfort in the familiar routine that always calmed her. After a brief moment of contemplation, Sarah decided that she couldn't just let it go. "I need to find out the story behind that locket," she said, her voice firm. "Something tells me it's important." With that, she retrieved the locket from her bag, feeling its cool surface in her hand. When she opened it, she found an intricate design inside, along with a faded photograph of a young woman with striking eyes and a warm smile. It appeared old, worn by time, and her heart ached for the woman whoever she was. "I want to make this right," Sarah said softly, staring at the picture as if it held the key to answers. "But how do I do that?" She glanced at Jake and Storm, who seemed to sense the shift in energy. "Let's gather some information about the neighborhood. Maybe someone at the local community center knows more." They set off once again, this time with a focus, a mission. The community center was just a short walk down the road, and the sun still hung high in the sky, painting the day in vibrant colors. As they arrived, Sarah noticed an exhibit on local history showcased in the front hallway and felt a spark of inspiration. "Stay here. Boys," she said, and the dogs settled on the floor, their watchful eyes trained on her as she stepped forward. The building buzzed with activity, laughter, discussions, and the warmth of the community all mixed together. She approached a friendly-looking woman at the front desk. "Excuse me," she said, trying to retrieve her thoughts amidst the staccato of conversations all around her. "I found this locket in the woods, and I'm hoping to find its owner. Do you recognize this woman?" She opened the locket and handed it to the woman, who squinted at the photograph. Yes. I believe that's Emily Johnson. She lived here years ago," the woman replied, her eyes lighting up. "Such a beautiful soul. Her family was well loved in the community. Do you know what happened to her?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. Sadly, she passed away several years ago. It was a tragic incident. She went missing one evening, and although they found her eventually, it was heartbreaking for everyone. Her family still holds a small memorial every year. "Where would I find them?" Sarah pressed, feeling an urgency to return the locket to its rightful owner, even if it was just a memory now. "We usually hold the memorial in Maple Grove Cemetery. This Saturday evening, I can give you the details if you want." "Yes, please." The woman scribbled down the details, handing them over with a nod. "I'm glad you're doing this. This locket means a lot to those who loved her." As Sarah walked out, Jake and Storm surged to their feet, sensing her excitement. "We've got a lead," she announced, joy in her voice. "We're going to return the locket to her family." Jake barked in enthusiasm, while Storm wagged his tail, the three of them exuding an unstoppable energy. The feeling of purpose, the spark of connection, it all lit a fire inside her that she hadn't felt in a long time. The days passed in a whirlwind to research, gather information, and prepare for the memorial. Every waking moment found her thinking about Emily and the life she had led, longing to know more about the woman behind the photograph. She even pored over old newspapers and community records, piecing together fragments of a life filled with warmth and joy. Finally, Saturday arrived, and Sarah was a bundle of nerves. She donned a simple but respectful outfit, holding the locket tightly in her hand. Jake sat proudly at her side, while Storm seemed to sense her unease, offering comfort with his gentle nudges. As they arrived at the cemetery, a gentle breeze rustled through the trees and the air felt heavy with emotion. Several families gathered around a beautifully adorned grave. Flowers, candles, and heartfelt notes surrounded the stone. It was clear that Emily had been dearly missed. With a deep breath, she approached the group, feeling the weight of anticipation drop in her stomach. "Excuse me," she began softly, gathering her courage. "I hope I'm not intruding, but I found this locket in the woods. It belonged to Emily, and I wanted to return it." The moment she spoke Emily's name, silence fell over the group. A woman stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears. "Emily was my sister," she whispered, her voice cracking. Thank you for bringing this back to us." As she held out the locket, the woman accepted it with trembling hands, and as she opened it, Sarah saw her expression shift from sadness to overwhelming joy. "She always wore this necklace. We searched for it everywhere after—" The woman paused, her voice hitching with emotion. "Thank you," she reiterated, choking back tears. Sarah felt warmth spread through her heart, each word punctuated by gratitude that resonated deep within her. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, her voice gentle. "I hope this brings you comfort." The woman nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks as she took a moment to gather herself. The gathered families offered their condolences, each sharing their stories and memories of Emily. Sarah felt a kinship with these people, despite the sorrow swirling around them. Deep down, she realized that helping return the locket wasn't just about an object. It was about bringing a piece of someone back to the light. As the memorial began, they lit candles and shared stories, filling the air with laughter and bittersweet tears. Jake and Storm, ever watchful, lay by her side, sensing she was at peace during this difficult moment. She felt grateful for their presence, for their ability to comfort her amid uncertainty. As night began to fall, the atmosphere shifted. The flickering candlelight danced, casting shadows across the gravestones as an unsettling chill crept into the air. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the solemnity of the moment, drawing attention away from the stories being shared. "What was that?" someone murmured, sensing the shift in energy. The families grew quiet, eyes darting toward the tree line bordering the cemetery. Then, a figure stepped out from behind the trees, cloaked in darkness, eyes gleaming in the twilight. The memory of the man who had chased her earlier flashed through Sarah's mind, panic gripping her heart. "What do you want?" she called out, instinctively stepping in front of the grieving family, sensing danger. Jake and Storm stood poised, ready to protect her. The figure remained silent, a menacing presence striding forward. As the faces of the families turned toward the intruder, the atmosphere thickened with dread. "Just thought I'd check in," the man replied, his voice cold and taunting. "What's all this, then? A little memorial for a lost soul?" "Leave us," Sarah demanded, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. She felt anger build within her. She wouldn't allow him to ruin this moment. But the man smirked, his intentions clearly malicious. "It seems there are other things at play here. Things that don't belong to you," he jested. "And I plan to take what is mine." Suddenly, tension erupted. The families huddled together while Jake barked fiercely, ready to defend. Sarah could feel her heart racing, courage coursing through her as she stood her ground. "Enough," she shouted, determination surging through her. "You're not welcome here." The intruder's eyes gleamed with a dark intensity as he stepped closer, and the wind picked up, sending chills down her spine. The stage was set for confrontation. All that remained was to find strength in her voice and rely on the unwavering loyalty of her dogs. "Stay back," she warned, holding her ground, despite the creeping darkness that threatened to envelop them. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but she knew that she wouldn't back down. Not today. Jake and Storm stood strong, a wall of love and loyalty by her side, bracing themselves for whatever might come next. In that moment, Sarah silently vowed to protect the memories of Emily as much as she cherished her own, untangling the threads of fear and finding courage in the truth that love would always prevail over darkness.